Hi everyone, thanks for watching the last video, really appreciate it and I hope you enjoyed this one. This one, as you can see from the title, is games that make you feel versus games that make you numb. And for me, I'm going to specifically focus on games that make you feel in this video, because those games to me hold so much artistic value and so much ability to make you think and make you feel about these games. And to me, these are the games I classify as art. A game that can classify as art to me does not necessarily require itself to have a great story, but having a great story massively helps it. Having a great story in your game, and a story that deserves to be told, and a story that deserves me to spend the time to analyze it, to think about it, to internalize the message and the meaning behind the character's actions. To me, that's what makes this industry so fantastic, and not enough games are doing it, and certainly not enough games are using the medium of gaming to the highest level of potential of making a great story. My ideal way for story to be told is through gameplay means alone. That means less with cutscenes, more with gameplay. However, that doesn't mean that cutscenes are a bad thing at all. Cutscenes are extremely critical and vital to making your game good. For me, there are plenty of games out there that get described as story-rich, or that have a great story, which don't have a great story. A good example of this is something like Destiny, which hasn't got a good story. Someone who can tell me it's got a good story, I would love for you to break it down for me in the comments of this fucking video. Explain to me how you think Destiny 2 has a good story. Because to me, Destiny 2 is just a way to take money from you yearly through expansions, and a game that isn't particularly fun and just has a repetitive, addictive gameplay loop that's not very good or conducive to a good game. Now, I want to focus more on games that make you feel in this video, games that do have good stories and integrate the gameplay extremely well into them as an entire concept of the overall experience of the game. To me, an amazing example of this sort of gameplay is Red Dead Redemption 2. I think this actually has one of the best designs around the story of the game. Not as much in the gameplay department. The gameplay of Red Dead 2 is the gameplay of all Rockstar games since GTA 4. You go to a location, you shoot some people, you loot some things, and then the story continues. But the part of the game that I think is extremely well designed and is, in my opinion, an improvement over the fame system from the first game, although the fame system in Red Dead 1 does deserve some credit on its own. To me, a great example of why this game, specifically Red Dead 2, has such a great design around its story is because, to me, one thing I noticed on my third playthrough of the game, which obviously I'm a little bit slower than the average fucking person, I guess, because I didn't really think about it until after I played the game already, which was one thing that everyone does in Red Dead and in GTA and any Rockstar game that gives you freedom, is they fuck around in the overworld. I know the second I got off that fucking mountain, I fucked around with the people of Valentine. I just took the piss. I wasn't in a rush to do the missions. I wanted to see what this world had to offer me. Now, one of the big design points that I think is so fantastic about these types of games, and especially with Red Dead 2, is the design around the honor system. The honor system fundamentally changes the story and how Arthur acts to those around him and how Arthur acts to the things he uses. For example, the horses. Having a high bond with your horse will affect the last mission in the game as long as you have that horse, because he thanks the horse for everything it's done and consoles it under great threat to his own self while the horse is passing away. I want to make very clear, by the way, there is spoilers in this video. I'm sorry for already not making that clear. However, I want to make very clear the reason why I think the honor system is so good is because most players will begin the game with quite low honor. They'll go around robbing people because they want to see how the mechanic works and if it's fun or how engaging it is. And it's fucking engaging. People's reaction to being robbed is pretty good. The threatening system that they brought back is fantastic, that if someone sees you commit a crime, you can run after them, tackle them, threaten them, or beat them into submission so they don't rat to you into the local law enforcement. To me, great design is imperative to great stories and great gameplay. The design of a game is the foremost important part of any game. The level of detail in the games I could take or leave. I don't need the best graphics to enjoy a story in a game. It's not necessary. That being said, Red Dead 2's gameplay and graphics and everything else inside that game still looks fantastic to this day. Rockstar Games, like I've said in my previous video, is one of the few AAA developers you can put a lot of faith in, and a lot of mileage can go into their games, and a lot of time and passion and love goes into their games. I'm excited for GTA 6 because it's one of the only games I have faith in to be actually well made and well produced and well designed and well written, even though the writing team has changed. I have faith in them to make a great story and some great, absolutely fantastic characters once again. But I want to stick on Red Dead 2 for now. The honor system is very well made because most people will develop negative honor over time by choices they make from in the overworld. Robbing people, killing civilians, having gunfights with law enforcement. These things are all very much ingrained, and the idea is that Rockstar expects you to do them at some point. The another thing they do in the game that I find is very, very well made is the way the game constantly makes you feel like you're on the run. The mechanics around the gameplay, that the map is constantly getting smaller and smaller to the point in which it's a fucking absolute hindrance to try and get anywhere near the end of the game because you're wanted in most places. To me, a great part of these games is the fact that a good way to look at these games is, for me at least, is the story of Red Dead 2 and the performances that the voice actors and all of the mocap people had done with this game overall. The way Arthur talks to his gang mates and explains how he feels, and one of the biggest things that I think is heavily overlooked in the game, and one of my personal favorite features of the entire game, is Arthur's journal. Arthur's journal shows that he's got a genuine knack for being able to write and draw, and he is a very artistic and well-spoken person, although it doesn't come across when he speaks, because he's not a confident person in who he is. Arthur's story around being a follower, not a leader. Arthur does not make major decisions throughout the game up until the end. He is a follower of Dutch's creed and mottos. And although he eventually sees Dutch for the calm man and charlatan that he is, and throughout the game it's constantly hinted at that other gang members have figured this out, such as Charles, to me shows that he has had a great amount of the ability to show you that Arthur is not a free thinker. He is not someone who will go out on his own path and set his own decisions and set his own ways, because Arthur is a follower. He is someone who doesn't have the ability to rationalize these things by himself. Although he does, he just doesn't have the confidence to. And it's not until Arthur gets tuberculosis that he realizes the way he's been living is wrong. And the juxtaposition with Mary, not Mary Beth, I don't remember her name off the top of my head, but the love interest that Arthur had from the past, she shows him the life he could have had, a life where it was maybe not as exciting, and maybe he wouldn't have been as good at it, but he could have been happy with someone that he loves, and it's shown through the gameplay of the game when he helps her voluntarily every time whenever she needs a help. At least I did that with my Arthur. I didn't think fucking her off was a great decision to make. I didn't even think they should have gave you the choice because it didn't make sense for Arthur's character. To me, Arthur's a character who he's your character. At the end of the day, he's going to act how you want him to act. But it doesn't mean he's a ruthless sociopathic killer. At the start, he's a murderer. He's a murderer and a robber. There's nothing special about him. But as the game progresses, you learn more about this man who his whole life has been led astray by a man who can constantly force him to do things for him through very minor coercion. All he does is ask him, and Arthur does it because Arthur feels indebted to Dutch. And the gang falling apart is enough for him to realize that the one person he needs to get out of this is John. John has the chance of the life that Arthur never had. At least that's how I perceive the story, because Abigail also is someone that Arthur is extraordinarily fond of. And Jack is another member of the gang that, although isn't a center stage member of the gang and is kind of not really a necessary member of the story, unless you've played Red Dead 1 where you know he plays a pivotal role in the story. To me, the character arc that Arthur goes through after the tuberculosis diagnosis, knowing that he got it beating a man over a couple of bucks, to me, is a fantastic gameplay element that Rockstar were able to introduce and were able to slowly over time develop into one of the best stories that any game has ever told. Another game I want to talk to about this, particularly 3 games I want to talk to about this, is Undertale and Cyberpunk, and we're going to get onto Undertale now. Undertale is a game that gameplay-wise, I'm not particularly fond of. The bullet hell style in the small box, I don't really particularly care. I'm not the biggest fan of it myself. But the characters and the amount of love and effort that goes into the script of the game. The name Comic Sans, because his text box is Comic Sans, is fucking genius. I think it's fantastic. I think Toby Fox does a fantastic job in that game. He makes characters who are monsters and scary in theory very likable and very human in a way that makes a lot of sense. And the fact that you get the choice on how you play based on how the game is going, doing the genocide run or the non-genocide run, where you have these different characters who have much different outcomes, and these characters who are not trying to hurt you. It's you who's like the monster by the end of the game, and Sans explains it perfectly. When Sans is the final boss fight, it's a great reveal that Sans is really powerful and that he's not just a jokester, even though he is. But to me, a great example of how the gameplay doesn't have to match up to make a great story is Undertale. Undertale is fantastic. It's a great game for a story that you should definitely watch, definitely play, or if you can't play it because it's too hard for you, definitely watch. It's worth a watch at least. Another great example of games that to me tells a great story through the performance and characters is Cyberpunk. Cyberpunk's performance by Keanu Reeves is next level good. I think his performance as Johnny Silverhands is fantastic. The voice actor for V is really, really good. They play off each other fantastically. If I don't know, but if I had to guess, they would have recorded these lines in a room together because they bounce off each other so naturalistically, so effortlessly, that they're able to really capture the feeling of these characters. And the character dynamic is fantastic. One of these characters is actively killing the other, and yet they find common ground. They talk about problems. Johnny opens up as the game goes on, knowing that V ain't got much time left anyway, and he's only in V's head. It doesn't matter what he tells him. He comments on the world around him. He tries to help V see things from a different perspective. To me, that is absolutely fantastic, and I think it's a very, very, very well-made game. To me, the gameplay of Cyberpunk, you can take or leave. I think it's pretty good, especially after the updates, but I even liked it when I first played it, so maybe I'm a bit easier to please. But I was more engrossed by far by the performances. Characters feel like characters. They don't feel like placeholders. They don't feel like they exist for me to exploit or for me to talk to. They exist because there's a reason for them to exist. Evelyn is a great example. To me, Evelyn's a good character with a decent story and a decent arc. It makes sense. Judy has a great character arc overall, where she falls out of love with the city she's lived in. For a very simple reason. Too many people fucking die. Too many people don't make it out of this fucking city. To me, great design. Another character, Jackie Wells, who you have very limited exposure to, but you can feel the bond that V and Jackie have. In their card, the performance between both of them as Jackie's dying does feel fantastic. I think it's very, 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 very good. I think the performances of people like the first fixer you meet, I don't remember his name, the big black guy, the big fat black guy who sets you up. I think his performance is fantastic, and he's only in the game for a very limited amount of time. Another example of these types of games that for me makes a lot of sense from a narrative and gameplay structure is, like, although V becomes like this near mythical creature by the end of the fucking game, like the guy's such a fucking goon and a cunt that the guy is so fucking good at his job, it's insane to me. But it thematically makes sense. It's like the ending where you have the question of, should you try to save V and get him as much time as possible, or should he go out in a blaze of glory and become a legend of Night City, or should he just fade away? It's a great juxtaposition because it's very easy to talk big about going down in a blaze of glory and dying the way you lived, and like, you know, like the cowboy in the Old West, one last duel, one last standoff. It's very easy to talk big until the opportunity presents itself. Most people would rather die at the age of 80, you know, and to me, it's a fantastic juxtaposition because to me, the more realistic ending is you buy as much time as you can to spend time with the people you love. And to me, another great example of how these games all manage to create great stories and interpersonal drama with their gameplay and stories is another game that I really love is Paper Please. Papers, Please is a whole game about doing a menial job that gets slightly more difficult and slightly more detailed oriented as the weeks go on. You're the border patrol guard to an authoritarian communist government. They don't ever expressly say it's communist, but you can sort of pick it up. It's not exactly the most subtle game in the world. But it's about trying to be a decent person in an undecent world that you know that has a system that you can't change. But these little sprinklings of personality within the games is absolutely fantastic. Like, a great example is the border guard, who gets paid a little bonus for every person you send his way to be, I assume, murdered by these people with guns, but I don't really know. But at the end of the day, these characters have got a very broad section of characterization, even with the limited amount of graphics, the limited amount of story, and the virtual absence of cutscenes. The gameplay makes you care about just names on the side. At least it did for me. I cared that my family got better. The story takes unexpected twists and turns. Like, when you earn enough money to upgrade your apartment, most games would leave that being just an upgrade. It's a specific B2 upgrade from a C apartment to a B2 apartment. However, once you go up, your neighbors report that you shouldn't be earning that kind of money, and you get forced back down, and they seize some of your assets, and your family suffers for it. All because your neighbor becomes jealous of this fact. To me, that is a very, very, very interesting point, because it shows that the game is talking also about classism and resentment for the people who climb up next to you, rather than resentful for the people at the top. Because to me, that is a fantastic description of the real world. And the man who makes these games, I can't remember his name off the top of my head. I really want to go and look it up, but I feel like if I do, I'm going to lose track of myself in this video. I know he's an auteur dev. I know he also made Return of the Obra Dinn, which, although is not my cup of tea, is also a fantastic fucking game that you should definitely check out. It has a very unique gameplay loop, and I really, really, really enjoy it. Another example for me is that, for me personally, a great game has got great ability to make you feel. Making you feel a certain way about certain things that happen within the game. To me, these things are far more important than your average run-of-the-mill bullshit Call of Duty campaign, which is always so over the top and so melodramatic that it doesn't really ever feel like there are any stakes, because they constantly raise the stakes in every game. One of the best scenes in any COD game is from Modern Warfare, where the nuke goes off, and you see the aftermath of a nuclear bomb from the point of view of a soldier you've played as for the first couple of missions in the game. You see it from his point of view as he's leaving the war zone before the nuke goes off, but he doesn't get far enough away, and he dies to the radiation from the events of the nuclear bomb that happens in the story. That, to me, is a very impactful moment. Far more impactful than No Russian, which is, like, very juvenile in comparison. I know some people will say that's blasphemous, but to me it is very juvenile. It felt like, to me, they're really grabbing at straws to try and give you a scene that, like, would shock the general audience the same way the nuclear bomb scene does, but it doesn't hit the same. It really doesn't, not to me at least. A great example, to me, of a game that has a great story, great characters, is The Last of Us. Both games, Part 1 and Part 2. And it also shows a very bold and artistic direction to bring the story, where a character who, and this is a major spoiler, but the game is fucking 4 or 5 years old this year. If you ain't played it by now, come on guys, get the fuck on it. It's on PC, you can play this fucking game if you really want to. But in The Last of Us Part 1, you play as Joel, as everyone knows. That game is fucking, Jesus Christ, it's 12 years old. So to me, a great example in that is you play as Joel for the majority of that game. I know there's a section you play as Ellie, but you play as Joel for the majority of it. To me, Joel is a great character with great insights and great perspectives on things. He's a survivor. He doesn't open up well. He's not someone who you can constantly expect will make himself seem like someone who approaches things from a nuanced perspective, because to him nuance isn't really there anymore. He's hesitant to give his name out, and over time softens up with this child who is like a surrogate daughter to him after losing his daughter. To me, Joel represents a larger problem with the world that he lives in, which it can turn even decent people into absolute fucking monsters. But Joel makes a very bad decision at the end of the game. Objectively, what he does is wrong. even though I agree with it, I don't think the odds of them finding a cure from killing Ellie was very high, and I think killing a child is wrong in most circumstances. And I don't think the odds of making the cure were particularly high, at least, from my point of view, in my interpretation of the story. Does that mean Joel gets a free pass to kill all those people? Absolutely not. Some of those people he killed are absolutely... they're innocent enough, you know? Like, the doctor trying to protect the patients from doing what he thinks right. To me, the murder of him is unjustified. The murder of the nurse next to him is unjustified. The fact that he does those things is monstrous. And it makes sense for Abby's arc to seek revenge. But to me, a big part of that game shows that revenge is never worth it. Abby doesn't become more fulfilled for killing Joel. She just loses her friends and her life around her as the game progresses. And she only finds her own form of redemption through Lev, who is a character that is pretty well designed overall, I feel like. For me, a great example is that it's a great juxtaposition because she becomes the Joel to Lev, what Joel was to Ellie. And to me, it also shows that Ellie ends up in the position that she most feared from the end at the end of the game. To me, the scene where Ellie is constantly being manipulated by other people. Ellie has let it go in some degree when she's living with Dina and their child together. And Dina and Jesse's child she's raising as her own on a farm with just them three. But then Joel's brother comes back and tells her, I can't do it, emotionally manipulating her to finish what she started, what she thinks Joel would have wanted. But if you think about it, Joel would have never wanted her to go after revenge. He would have never wanted her to put her life at risk for a man who's already dead. You're not going to bring me back by killing these people. And at the end of the game, she doesn't do it. She decides not to. And I fucking hate the argument that you should have been given the choice. Player choice is not always required for every game. I think player choice hurts more stories than it fucking helps. Ending Tron 3000s are shit. They're bad design and shows indecisive story making and hurts the artistic vision of the creators. And I'm a fan of fuck the creator. I think the creator can be wrong about their work. I don't think a creator has the unbiased objective facts about how the work should be perceived. That's not how it works, in my opinion. Everyone is going to experience these stories and games differently. But I think the story of The Last of Us, I understand there's DEI in it. Who gives a shit, man? Why the fuck do you care? Is Dina's personality made up of the fact that she's not white? I don't think so. It never really occurs to me. Jesse's character doesn't ever stand out to me that he's an Asian man. That's his only character trait? Absolutely fucking not. Is Abby's only character trait that she's a woman? Absolutely fucking not. To me, it's a ridiculous argument by this stupid fucking crowd online who are so against anything that's not a white man, white woman in their video game because it's unrelatable. I've never had a problem relating to CJ in GTA San Andreas. I've never had a problem relating to Franklin in GTA 5. Even though I don't think GTA 5 is the pinnacle of all stories, it's a hell of a lot better than most of this shit that the DEI crowd does like. The anti-DEI crowd, I should say. Because the anti-DEI crowd really like games like Days Gone because it's a majority white cast with 2 white main leads who fucking... Deacon St. John is a shit character with nothing to provide to the game or the events that take place because he's a boring, insufferable whinger. All he does is whine. He just complains at every turn. But he'll get his own little fucking video very soon. You can look forward to that one. Because fuck Days Gone. It's a shit game. But this is a video about good fucking games. Good games that are well designed and deserve your time. Unlike Days Gone. I find it sickening that Days Gone has got a positive rating on Steam. But anyway, I'm focusing too much. I'm getting annoyed thinking about Days Gone. I apologize for that. But that fucking design disaster that people glaze like it's the second coming of Jesus is fucking pathetic to me. But anyway, back onto good games. So for me, I don't really find it hard. Like, how someone looks or how someone feels, how someone looks to me doesn't matter. I don't give a shit if they're Asian. I don't give a shit if they're trans. I don't give a shit if they're gay. I care that they're a good character. When I read books, like my favorite book series is A Song of Ice and Fire. I know, it's the basic white bitch of fantasy books at this point, but I love it. I love it. The pool scene in the book is 10 times better in the show, and it's one of the best scenes in the fucking show. So to me, but would it matter to me if Jamie was black in the show? It wouldn't. It would feel weird if he had all white siblings and he was the only black guy, but I believe in having the best character for the role. Now, I understand people will say, it's not about them being black, or it's not about them being Asian, or it's not about them doing this, or this. But to me, a character is not defined by just their physical attributes. They're defined by their ability, what they do in the story. You know, like, I never hear anyone complaining about the fact that in Dead Space 1, in the original game, Isaac Clarke looks like a guy at his very latest in his early 30s, yet he's described as a man with decades of experience in his field and is one of the best people in his field. That's poor design and is a poor reflection on their ability to make a character. Because at the end of the day, he should be in his 30s, and they rectify this in the new game. In the remake of the games, I should say. Because he does look older. He has gray hairs. He looks a lot more rugged. Because he should be. He should be in at least his mid-40s if he's someone who is one of the best people in the world in his field. To me, great characters are more than just how they look. They're more than skin deep. They are more than what you see when you look at them. And that is what makes Arthur Morgan such an incredible character. Is that Arthur Morgan on the outside looks like a dumb hothead who's very big and strong. He's one of the wider people in the gang. He's one of the stronger looking people in the gang, and he carries more weights around. Whenever there's something to carry or to lift, he's always the first person they go to. When the wheel breaks, two of them lift the cart, and he lifts the heavy wheel himself and bashes it on himself. Because he's stronger than the others. Although Charles could probably give him a run for his money on strength. But that's a completely off-topic tangent. But to me, it's the conversations, in those little conversations that Arthur has with other people, that make the game, to me, absolutely fantastic. Like, Arthur's view on voting is one of the best lines, when the suffragette tells him she wants to vote, and Arthur can choose to respond with, "You want to vote? Well, more fool to you." It's fantastic. It's funny, because he doesn't believe in government. He doesn't believe in big government. He doesn't believe in small government. Never mind this big overarching government that's coming to take away his way of life. But Arthur slowly realizes his way of life isn't right, and it is dying, and there is no real idea to it. Charles points it out in literally the second opening to the second chapter. How do you rob and kill people kindly? We don't, despite what Dutch says. To me, this line stuck in my head the entire game, because you can't kill and rob people nicely no matter what Dutch says. Dutch is no more than a criminal. He's just a criminal with a nice way to spin it. To me, the design of these games and the story within these games is absolutely fantastic. I absolutely love them. And these games and stories can be found in games that you wouldn't expect to find them in. Like I said, in Papers, Please. The small characters that you keep appearing or that you keep talking to throughout the game. The personality on display in a game like Papers, Please, with such a limited exposure to these characters that are barely characters. They're basically just archetypes who just give you a little bit of spiel in text boxes, is a lot more than you get from the latest Call of Duty or the latest Battlefield or the latest Destiny expansion even. Like, Destiny has 3 characters. 3 fucking character types. Overly serious, 1 comedy relief, and 1 guy who stands around there moping and gaping with his fucking mouth open. I'll always remember the scene in Forsaken's DLC, because that's when I got back into Destiny 2, and I got out of there pretty quickly. I got out of there just as the Black Armory came out, because I realized it wasn't fun. I was just grinding a game that wasn't particularly fun and was just designed to sink time into, and it was making me numb. So it will be in the Making Me Numb video. Don't you worry about that. It's coming in there. But to me, one of the lines in that is when all of the vanguards are standing there, and then he says, your guardian, after Cade dies, says, the guy goes, "I don't want to lose any more friends," and your guardian's walking and he says, "You won't have to." And to me, it just screams of him waiting to someone to go, "Please, no, oh god," like he's crying on his way out, like he wanted someone to stop him, like, "Oh god, they don't really care if I die." And then you go on the quest to fucking kill that fucking dickhead Crow or whatever his fucking name is now. But who gives a shit? He's so characterly bland and boring. Like, I don't give a fuck, and I don't think anyone else should give a fuck. The game is not very fucking interesting. It is not a story-rich game. It might have a deep world building if you read the grimoire, but who the fuck is gonna do that? And if you are doing that, stop. Get some fucking help. You're searching for something that's not there. You get like 5 cutscenes a year off of Bungie. You get 5 fucking story moments a year from Bungie. Fantastic. Good for you. It's like when Zimbala's voice actor died, and it's sad that someone died. It's always sad when someone dies. But his performance as Zimbala isn't exactly earth-shattering. His voice has one tone, monotone and sounding disinterested, or sounding overly serious. He's a caricature of a character. Sorry, I can barely speak English, boys. But to me, it doesn't make any sense that anyone would give a shit about his character in the game, because what is he besides just the stoic one compared to the stoic lady one or the funny robot man? It's so fucking boring. To me, they're just archetypes of characters. They're not really characters. There's so little in them that make them really characters. But that's not really the most important part of this video. The most important part of this video is to show you how some of these games come out and they make such fantastic stories, and it raises the medium of gaming to such a high level and such a high standard that, to me, it is absolutely fantastic. There is so little that comes out often enough because these games take effort to make. There's very few games that I've mentioned that are low effort because you can't put low effort and no passion and make something artistically fulfilling. It's why you won't see something like this come from most major studios, because most major studios are creatively bankrupt. Ubisoft is gonna be financially bankrupt soon because of how creatively bankrupt they are. They are gonna have to be bought by a company like Tencent, where they're gonna make shovelware fucking garbage for the rest of their lives because they don't have anyone at that development team who has a backbone to stand up for artistic vision, because there isn't an artistic vision left in their company. They recently had to overhaul a game they brought out this year in Star Wars Outlaws, and they barely made any differences, in my opinion. They added ability to keep a two-handed gun when you climb walls. I'm so impressed. Wow, good fucking job, Ubisoft. To me, Ubisoft's getting their whole own video anyway, because they're a train wreck of a company that was, in my opinion, was pretty okay, but never great anyway. They made, in my opinion, 2 absolutely undeniably great games, and the rest of the games they bring out are utter garbage. It's utter hogwash. And if anyone wants to, and I would love to hear your opinions on that, because to me, it's something that matters. It's something that I want to talk about, because one thing, you can say I'm wrong about everything I've said here. You can say I'm wrong and that I'm looking into these things wrong, and I would love to hear your feedback. To me, that's the whole point of these videos. It's for me to see things from different perspectives. I make these videos for me. I'm a selfish fucking creator here. I make them because I feel like I have something that I can say, and I would love to hear other people's point of views on these things. It's the reason why I try to reply to every comment I get, as long as it's not just blatant like glazing of my cock. But even then, I'll leave it a heart or whatever. To me, a great example of where Ubisoft is like, if I'll explain that in a different video. But to me, like, another example is that you don't need to have like fantastic gameplay to tell a great story. I just think it helps. To me, the medium of games gives you such a great option to actually have the characters make interactive choices that affect what they do and can tell a story through the characters who are reacting to the effects of the game that they're playing, of the actions that they're making. Like in Cyberpunk, a big criticism I have is you have 2 options to reply with dialogue. Yes, and sarcastically say yes, but you still say yes. It's and I understand why. They want you to experience all the content they've made, but to me, it's fantastic in a way because the performances carry it and the overall story carries it, because it is a great game with a great design. It's one of the few games where I can strongly say the location is a character all by itself, and that's a very rare feat to make. CD Projekt Red do make great games, but I was surprised people were surprised how buggy Cyberpunk was, given how buggy The Witcher 3 was at launch. The Witcher 3 wasn't a perfectly polished game, but it made up for it with a great story, a great protagonist, and great characters all around you. To me, it it shows that lots of people are willing to overlook small, minute issues. Now, Cyberpunk had a lot more than small, minute issues at launch. Now is the time to play Cyberpunk if there's ever been one. But The Witcher had a lot of issues at launch, and people overlooked them because they thought the game was absolutely fantastic. To me, a big thing that I dislike in game design is QuickTime events, because QuickTime events are a way to make sure you're paying attention during a cutscene or during gameplay with very cheap moves. It's why I'm not particularly fond of the Spider-Man games. To me, the Spider-Man games, like the Batman games, they made me feel like Batman, as cliche as that fucking is, and I don't want to sound like a fucking game reviewer or a games journalist, God forbid, but to me, a great example is that in Spider-Man, the game feels like a lot of the cool stuff Spider-Man does, he does by himself. When Spider-Man zips through the side of a crane, or he zips through 2 buildings and he goes sideways and it does that little pre-animated thing, I don't feel cool when I see a 2-second pre-rendered cutscene of me doing that. I don't feel that cool. When I feel cool is when I'm zipping through the city on webs. That's it. That gameplay, by the way, is like Spider-Man trying to be Batman. There's stealth missions in it. The guy wearing red and blue in bright colors is a stealth character now? Okay, then I guess. That's fantastic design. Great job, Insomniac. But the part of the game that does feel fantastic is the movement and mobility. And Spider-Man is always an interesting character because it's the juxtaposition of having a lot of power and using it responsibly. As Uncle Ben said, with great responsibility comes power or whatever. So at the end of the day, or whatever, I'm dead now. But for me, it's something that you should always be looking for in your games, is an artistic vision behind it. Like, to me, the greatest developers are solo developers, one guy who has a vision. And the vision can have compromises in it, but a story it can't have too many cooks in the kitchen. It's a problem with a lot of developers is they try to get everyone's opinion on a story, when the only person the reason why books are so successful is because it's one person's vision, typically. Sometimes they have people who help write it, but they don't fucking change a character's motivation. Like, to me, a great example of this is something like Ubisoft, where Ubisoft clearly has too many cooks in the kitchen. One guy's cooking rigatoni, the other guy's cooking ratatouille, and the guy in the middle who's designed it all has said this is gonna be bolognese. And you end up with a hogswash of jack shit, and it tastes like shit, and it plays like shit, and it is shit. Like, anyone, you can try to argue with me that Valhalla's a good game. It's a game made for nobody. Assassin's Creed players don't like it because there's no parkour and the setting's dull. The people who want to be a Viking might like it, but I don't feel like the characters are good enough to be a Viking kind of game. But to me, overall, the biggest issue is it doesn't have a captivating story. The story is uninteresting. The story is boring. Igor is a boring main character, or whatever the fuck his name is. Norway's beautiful. England is modeled beautifully, but it's boring. The world is boring. The way you interact with things is boring. The way you act around people is boring. The fact that at the end of the day, like Assassin's Creed Origins and Assassin's Creed Odyssey, I would have no interest in playing because they're too long, they're too big, they're too uninteresting. The main characters have so little drive. There's nothing there for me to give two shapes of a shit about. The fact that they advertised the first female protagonist in a game when they had made a fucking female protagonist in Syndicate is ridiculous to me. But no. What's the point in doing first if we just go back to change it when we feel like it's about time we were more progressive on the topic? To me, I hate faux progressivism because I'm someone who is a progressive. I believe in people should be treated right and she should be treated fairly by people. And the idea that you should hate on a minority because Donald Trump told you to, or the English Conservative Party's trying to take rights away from them, to me, it's pathetic, because if it was a different minority, you wouldn't be saying those things. To me, it's something that makes no fucking sense in the grander scheme of things. To me, like that real trailer for that game Interstellar or Intergalactic or something like that, the new Naughty Dog game that got shown off at the Game Awards, that game looks good. It had an interesting trailer with interesting setup. I'm a little bit less interested because at the end of the day it felt like just another pre-rendered trailer, but a pre-rendered trailer means nothing to me. It doesn't show me anything. I don't give a shit about it. That's just how it is. That's the rules for me. But the reason why the amount of hate I saw for the game was because of how the main character looked, who you didn't even get that much of a glimpse into who she is yet anyway. And then on top of that, it was this bullshit culture war that is constantly being pushed on people, even in gaming. That's why I have a saying that I use, which is gamers with a capital R at the end for racists or for bigots, because that's what they are. They only care. It's like that fat fucking loser who's screaming about they, them in Starfield. There are plenty of reasons to criticize Starfield. Having a they, them filter in the game is not one of them, because it is completely arbitrary. It doesn't fucking matter. The guy is sitting there going red in the face screaming for some reason. The only reason really is to try and get the audience that is consuming that kind of thing in the game. That is why he's doing it. He's not doing it because he thinks trans people shouldn't exist or non-binary people shouldn't exist. And if he does think that, he can go fuck himself anyway. He's just upset he ain't got no fucking hair. But anyway, listen, I'm going to wrap this one up because I'm going completely off topic. But I want to just say, these are games you should check out. They have great stories with undeniable character and absolutely engaging personalities. And there is clear love and passion being put into these games. There are plenty of indie games I didn't mention here that do also tell fantastic stories. One of my favorites, just to give you some quick ones that you should definitely try out, are Hollow Knight. Has great gameplay and a great story in the world building. Another great game that you should definitely check out is Spiritfarer. Spiritfarer is one of the few games that made me emotionally invested enough that I cried, and all of the characters in that are temporary passengers. That's another game you should absolutely try out. It's fan-fucking-tastic. Another game that you should 100% be checking out, to me, is the 3 games mentioned at the start: Undertale, Red Dead, and Cyberpunk. The Last of Us Part 1 and Part 2 are both equal billing to me in games you should check out if you have the time and the means to. These games are all fantastic. Indiana Jones and the Great Circle is absolutely fantastic. It's made with clear love and passion for the movies they're based on, without being overbearing on those, without relying on too much of you already liking the movies. Troy Baker does a fantastic performance as Indiana Jones. He acts like Indiana Jones would. The characters flow off each other fantastically. The story, although a bit cliched, is very fun. But one thing you can say about Indiana Jones is it's a walking cliche, but it's very exciting, very fun. It's designed like a movie. I absolutely love it. To me, that's another game where passion has trumped what the game should have been. And the amount of people I seen hating on it because of a guy in a fucking trailer talking about it was pathetic, because he was wearing an LGBT Bethesda shirt and had a fucking more progressive hairstyle. And I say progressive hairstyle because it was dyed and cut a bit oddly. But everyone just shit on this guy, and he deserves an apology that he'll never get, because these fucking bigots don't know how to apologize, because they're just buying the culture war bullshit that's being pushed on them. Because instead of targeting the people that are actually making their lives worse, they're trying to get them to target people who are in a similar boat to them, because they're fucking blind and stupid. But anyway, this is the video, and I want to say thank you for watching. Any feedback on how I can improve my content, I would massively appreciate. Any feedback at all on how I can maybe develop my skills at this, I would really appreciate. I am trying to make the content as good as possible, and I try my best with it. So thank you very much for watching this video. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe and all that fucking bullshit that every cunt asks you to do. If you didn't enjoy and like it, leave a fucking dislike. Tell me to go fuck myself. Tell me I'm wrong. I'd love to hear it. Anyway, thank you very much. I appreciate you watching, and yeah. Mwah.